Ready or not, here I come. Where are you? What do you hear?
The ocean.
There is something so unique about a child's ability to be in the moment, as if they have everything and nothing figured out at the same time. We spend so much time saying no, trying to teach them to act like us. But why? Why not follow their sense of wonder? Why not buy into their sense of play? It sometimes takes that one moment to put things into perspective.
It's me.
To move from inside your mind to the moments in front of you. We choose these moments to explore together, to take her lead, to connect with our childlike wonder, and to chase our dreams, ignoring the what-ifs, to show that your future is whatever you want it to be, to not lead with fear. For us, it's showing her through these objects from the past that your hidden gem is what you make it. Whether it's an object or maybe even something more. Our hidden gem is in finding these moments together.
That's nice.
The ones you take for granted, not forcing them, but letting them happen.
Hey, Mom, look at this.
Keep that one?
Ocean, meet more ocean.
It's funny, you know, no matter how much work and growth you put in, sometimes you just need a little reminder.
I can't keep on this road alone. And all this time I thought I knew, but all this time always been you. 'Cause I can run, but I can't hide the feelings that I know.
Welcome everyone to a really exciting episode of Nikon TV. I'm Chris Ogonek, your host, and we are going to be talking about the Z8 today. Now, before I get in to actually talking about it, I also will mention we're going to have two guests on today. We're going to have Preston Kanak. He is a cinematographer who is part of our launch with the Z8, and we're going to have Viktoria Haack, one of our Nikon Canada ambassadors, who was one of our photographers for the launch of the Z8. Now, I think I just did it. Z, I'm Canadian, but I jump back and forth. If anybody's industrious enough, and they want to go and do a counter as to how many Z's versus Z's I do today, absolutely feel free and shame me for jumping back and forth. But I apologize, it's not totally my fault. All right, so let's jump on in because this is really exciting. Obviously, people have known that this camera has been coming. There's been obviously the rumors, but we also had our teaser campaign a couple weeks ago that did have very little information about it, but they knew that it was going to be something big, and it is. Well, actually, it's small. So this is the Z8. Now, I'm not going to go through tech for like feature by feature with this camera because, to be totally honest, it's essentially a Z9, which is in itself amazing. So I'm not going to go through every single little feature set because there's a lot of other information out there. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to do some comparisons. I'm going to do some comparisons size-wise against, let's say, the Z6, Z7. I'm going to do some differences between the Z8 and the Z9. And I'm really going to try and kind of show you guys where it fits within the landscape and what you can kind of expect difference-wise. But as I said, this is, if you kind of think back to the D3, the D3 days back when this was kind of our first jump into full-frame DSLR territory that really kind of leapt us forward and into kind of what everybody expected us where we should have been. And then about a year and a half later, we came out with the D700, which was essentially a mini D3. Well, that's what has happened again. Year and a half ago, the Z9 came out, and now, lo and behold, we have a brand new, smaller and lighter version of it in the Z8. So that is what, to be honest, I think a lot of people were hoping for, and it's really exciting how close the Z9 and the Z8 truly are in terms of feature sets. It's really, really impressive how we've packed everything that people love about their Z9 into a smaller and lighter Z8. So let me kind of go off topic a little bit, not necessarily compare within our lineup, but just do a very quick comparison against the competition. I'm not going to go through every model or even talk about models per se, but what I'm really going to talk about is the main difference when you look at the price point of the Z8 versus everything else around the plus or minus $5,300 price point, because the Z8 spectacularly is coming in at $5,399. Now it's Canadian dollars, which is a sizable amount below what the Z9 is for being a very small and compact Z9. So the biggest difference you'll see in the competition of around the same price point is going to be the sensor. Now, I'm not talking resolution, I'm not talking anything like that. What I'm talking about is scan rate and what you're getting with the stacked sensor that is in the Z8 and the Z9. Now, we can talk about some of the benefits of having no mechanical shutter, you get no wear and tear, the benefits of shooting video, you can go and shoot under LED lights without any banding. So there's a lot of benefits to that electronic only stacked CMOS sensor, but experiential wise, the biggest difference you are going to notice between this and every other camera in its price point that does not have a stacked sensor is the EVF experience, specifically when shooting fast action or sports. With every other camera, you are going to get blackout, you're going to get repeating frames, you're going to have a experience in which you're going to have to guess a little bit more where your subject is going to be. If you have a bird flying across the frame, you're not going to see exactly where that bird is as you're firing in continuous burst mode. You are going to be getting either a little bit of blackout or you're going to see that kind of slideshow look. So you're going to have to anticipate where your subject is. Whereas with the Z8, you have no blackout, you have no repeating frames, you have no warping frames, you have a direct feed, and this is I'll spend a second going on about this. What we call our dual stream technology, we first introduced with the Z9, and it essentially allowed, it was the first of its kind to allow a dedicated feed, not just from the sensor to the processor, which every camera has, but to have a dedicated stream from the sensor to the EVF. Now, the main reason that's so important is because every other camera on the market has a single feed from the sensor to the processor. And then when you, the photographer, are looking through that EVF, you're essentially stealing a little bit of data here and there as you're firing. So you're not getting a perfectly clear and smooth experience. So that was the big differentiator with the Z9 when we first came out with it. But you also get that same experience with the Z8. So experience-wise, as kind of non-marketing as that is and how difficult that might be to actually place, it is actually going to be a major difference that you, the photographer, are going to notice when you look at the Z8 versus what else it's actually going up against. Now, that kind of leads itself to the point that, well, does the Z8 really go up against the other cameras at its price point? The answer is no, not really. When you look at the feature set, when you look at the versatility of the Z8, it really only has two main competitors. The Z9, because it is, but also the Sony A1. That's really its main competitor, because when you look outside of Nikon, because you have stack sensor, you have high resolution, you have high frame rate, you have 8K video. So all of these things that are incredibly versatile with the Z8, you get with the Z9, and you also do get with the Sony A1 as well. But the big difference is, if you're going to look at your wallet, the Z8 is over 3,000 Canadian dollars less than the A1. That in itself is pretty darn impressive. Obviously, we came at a lower price point with the Z9, but the Z8 really brings that down to a crazy level. So that for me is the biggest difference in the competitor sphere. Let's take a look at the actual Nikon lineup itself. So right off the bat, I'm not going to compare specs of the Z8 versus Z6 or Z7, but I will just slowly let you have a look at the size. So obviously when you look at the size of the Z8, and I will kind of pop the lenses off just so you can get a slightly better look at this, it is going to be bigger than the Z6 and the Z7. It is going to have a little bit of a bigger grip, which I can tell you, most cameras on the market, I instinctually just put my pinky down because I just know it's not going to fit, but it actually fits really, really nicely on the Z8. It is really, really comfortable. I don't know if you can tell, really, really excited about this? I am. So you have a bigger grip, which allows you to handhold larger lenses. I had the 24 to 70 f2.8 on before. You can go throw the 70 to 200 2.8. Any of the slightly larger glass is going to feel incredibly comfortable because the body does kind of fit with this larger Pro glass. So obviously it is going to be bigger than the Z6 and Z7, but it is also going to be noticeably smaller than obviously the Z9 and the D850. D850 being where a lot of photographers are kind of coming from if they haven't already made the move from DSLR. There's going to be a lot of D850 owners who are going to be looking at this camera going, ooh, this is very, very exciting. So if you're looking at the D850, this is just under 100 grams. I think the D850 is 1,005 grams. This is 910. And that's actually one of the big benefits of the Z8 versus the Z9 is its smaller size and smaller weight. So you're looking at 910 grams for the Z8, and you're looking at 1,340 grams for the Z9. So a sizable difference between the two of them. And that's going to be the main difference in terms of a benefit for the Z8 over the Z9. Actually, one other thing that we do have that is different is a second USB-C port. So Z9 has one, this actually has two. Now, if you're a stills photographer, you can get some benefit out of this as well, but one of the big benefits is if you're a videographer. If let's say you're using our MCN10 grip, well, that connects through USB-C. Well, if you're using a Z9 and you have an MCN10, well, how can you control it from either the gimbal or just power? Let's say you want to have power running into your camera to make sure you have tons of battery while controlling with the MCN10. Well, with the Z9, you have to pick one over the other. With the Z8, you have one for both. So you have a dedicated one for power and a dedicated USB-C for data delivery as well. So that's actually a really nice little touch. First time for any Nikon camera, regardless of whether it's DSLR or mirrorless. One other little feature, I don't want to say little, but one other feature in the Z8 is skin softening. Now that's a first, that's in-camera skin softening. Now, a lot of photographers may say, oh, I'm never really going to use that, and that's totally fine. You have a lot of powerful tools with your editing software that you'll probably go and use, but this also works for video. So it does multiple faces. I believe it's up to 3 faces that it can do at one time. You can obviously dial up or down the skin softening intensity. And that's something that could be very, very powerful if you just kind of are doing a run and gun shoot. You don't really want to spend too much time editing afterwards. Well, you can go do skin softening, whether it's video or stills as well. Now, let's go and talk about some of the benefits or some of the differences between the Z8 and the Z9, but now in favor of the Z9, because there are definitely still some reasons that some people may prefer the Z9. First, as much of a benefit as the smaller size and weight is for both photographers and videographers for the Z8, some people are still going to gravitate towards the Z9. Some people, if you're a portrait photographer, well, you would be doing this all day long unless you went and got the additional grip that is possible to get with the Z8. But obviously with the integrated grip with the Z9, you automatically have that and you no longer have to be doing this all day. You can very simply just flip the camera up and go and shoot in the vertical orientation. So whether it's shooting vertical, whether it's you just feel that that larger integrated grip is more comfortable. Some people just like the overall look and aesthetics of a larger grip. Hey, whatever you prefer. But some other benefit to that is the larger battery. So that is a big one for the Z9, is you are going to get better battery life, both in stills and video, because it essentially is a much larger battery because it can fit in that much larger grip. So bigger grip, longer battery life are the two big features, but you do also get some added additional things with the Z9 as well. I keep pointing over here in case you're wondering. The Z9 is what's actually recording me right now, so I am talking to the Z9. You do have the 10-pin port on the Z8, but you no longer have the PC sync. So for most photographers, that's not that big of a deal, but just so you're aware. You also do have with the Z9 built-in GPS. Again, most people, including myself, I just go and use the SnapBridge connection to go and tag any metadata, the GPS data from my phone to my camera. So me losing GPS isn't that big of a deal, but there are definitely some people out there who require the built-in GPS of the Z9. What else do we have? Oh, okay, so here's one that is a thing, but not a thing. You'll understand in a second. So the Z9 has a built-in Ethernet port. The Z8 does not. But you can, because you actually have this dual USB-C, so you can do power and data transfer if you actually want, because there is a USB-C to Ethernet adapter. That can plug into one of your USB-C ports, and that can now go and transfer data through Ethernet. So while the Z9 has it built in, the Z8 still actually does have it, but you do have to buy that separate small little adapter for it. So it kind of depends on how much you're actually going to be using that feature for whether you need it built in or whether the adapter will serve your needs. And the one last thing I will point out is 8K recording. Now, we've seen in the past other smaller form factor cameras that shoot video in 8K have a slight problem with overheating. The Z9 can go and record 8K for up to 2 hours and 5 minutes. And a lot of that was because of the larger body size. You had great heat dissipation. There was no issues pretty much whatsoever that I've come across in a year and a half with the Z9 in terms of recording because of a heat limitation. Well, with the Z8, you would expect smaller body size, so you're going to have very, very small 8K recording time limits. The competition against this record at about 20 or 30 minutes before their 8K recording time limit stops because of heat. Well, the Z8, an hour and a half. So that's 90 minutes versus the 2 hours and 5 minutes of the Z9. So yes, the Z9 can do more, but this is significantly more than what any other camera is capable of in its price point for recording at 8K. So you don't have to worry about a very, very small or unusable time limit when it comes to recording 4K 60, 4K 120, 8K. You're not going to have that issue. And part of that is due to the slightly larger body size in comparison to the Z6 and Z7. Obviously, you make the body a little bit larger and it helps dissipate the heat. And that was a major thing that our engineers wanted to make sure that they got right. We have partial magnesium alloy. We have another material. It's a carbon fiber polycarbonate blend, and the two of them together give incredible rigidity, incredible strength, but also great heat dissipation as well. So you add all that together and you get a camera that has very, very little downsides, whether you're shooting stills or video. You get the autofocus of the Z9, you get the frame rate of the Z9, you get the unbelievable up to 8K 60p raw video recording in camera capability of the Z9. All of that comes in a smaller and lighter package. I'm excited about it. I don't know if you are, but I'm very excited for that. So those are the main things that I kind of wanted to touch on when it came to the differences between the cameras. If there's anything else that you guys want to know about, differences between the Z8 and the Z9, differences between the Z6, Z7 II, and the Z8 and the Z9, you let me know in the comments below and I will definitely make sure to go and get you that answer. But I don't want to delve too much into this because we have two different interviews that I want to jump in and get on with because they are going to be a lot of fun. The first one is going to be Preston Kanak. Now, Nikon, we've actually worked with Preston in the past, back with, it was the D810. The D810 launch, we went and gave him a couple D810s and he went off with his team out east. He had this beautiful story and just shot so unbelievably well with a fisherman. I'll actually make sure that I load that link down below. Just if you want to see what DSLR quality can be in the right hands. One of our, I'm going to call him out and he's going to yell at me. One of my co-workers, Dan, huge video guy. He's a Z9 user. He loves mirrorless cameras for their video capabilities. He always kind of turns his nose up at me when I mention that DSLRs can provide very good quality. And he kind of turns his nose up and says, yeah, sure, old timer, yeah. But the answer is, when you put DSLRs into the hands of a professional, I'm not saying Dan's not a professional, then you really get to see what they're capable of. And when you look at this Every Moment Counts video that Preston did years ago, it's just amazing what he was able to kind of pull out of that camera. So, knowing what he was capable of then, we haven't worked with him too much since then because he's gone to do a lot of big projects using much larger form-factored cameras. And not to say that we didn't want to work with him, it was just his career kind of took him off in a different direction. But we reconnected with him a little while ago. He's been shooting with a Z9. He's been absolutely loving it. He's kind of been getting his creative juices flowing quite a bit more. And when we came to him and said, hey, would you like to go and shoot this launch project with us on this new camera, on this new Z8? His answer was, oh my God, yes, when we told him how close it was to the Z9, but in a smaller body, because that's really what he'd been kind of craving. So I'm really excited to hear his thoughts on it, so you guys can hear his thoughts on it. He went and created a beautiful kind of emotional story, Find Your Hidden Gem, where him and his family actually went out west. Instead of going out east, he went out west. And it's this beautiful story about trying to find your balance in life, between finding that kind of love with your family, your home life, while at the same time being able to go and work and have a career. So he again, it's Preston. I don't even know what else I have to say about that. If you're aware of him, you know how soft-spoken he is, how genuine he is. He was just a pleasure to work with in every way. So I'm going to stop just blathering on about him. So let's go and talk to Preston and see what he actually thought about the camera. Preston, thank you so much for joining us on Nikon TV.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk a little bit more with you today about the beautiful camera you guys have developed.
Well, that's kind of the amazing thing is when you're part of these projects, like you had the camera a couple months ago, and it was one of those things where it kind of went pretty quickly, and then you have the camera, and then it's just nothingness until the actual day of launch. And I know how excited I am for the camera, and I know how excited you were when we first told you about it, and then you shot with it. So kind of having that like dead period where you can't talk about it, it's all kind of so secret. It's really now fun to be able to actually talk about it to regular everyday people.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's weird. I'm sure people are going to think me saying I can't get it off my mind. I've been using the Z9 kind of in that period, but really because of the form factor of the Z8, it's just, I'm excited for the launch and get it back in my hands again to play with.
Well, so let me kind of, because I did a little bit of an intro for everybody before I jumped on with you, because I didn't want to make you embarrassed with all the amazingly nice things I had to say about you. But we had a pass with the D810. We went and did a launch video for that. And then from there, you actually went to much kind of larger rigged formatted cameras. And you kind of moved away from that, and now you're kind of trying to get back into the smaller form factor. Can you kind of give me a little bit of a reason why you went from one type to another?
Yeah, for me, a lot of it gets kind of back to my roots as to why I started filmmaking in the first place. When I started in film, it was a passion. It was me just wanting to explore the ideas up here. And kind of as I turned it more into a career and working on bigger commercial shoots, and with these bigger platforms, kind of the style of filmmaking changed quite a bit with that. It was bigger setups, bigger lighting setups, bigger grip scenario, like just everything was bigger. And I felt that I was kind of, my passion was almost slipping away because of the freedom of the smaller systems. And with kind of the Z8 and kind of the opportunities that are opened up with this camera, it's allowing me to think more again of again, why I got into filmmaking. And it's instead of it being something that's in the way, with this camera, I can just always have it with me. And if I feel inspired to go shoot a time lapse or go do a mini documentary or something like that, I just have the camera with me. And it's a lot more freeing than working with the larger systems.
And that's kind of tying into the storyline of Find Your Hidden Gem, because that's kind of about finding the balance in your life, whether it's family, career, kind of finding that what makes you happy. So I feel that there's a nice kind of, as cheesy as a word is, synergy between the storyline that you built for the camera and you actually getting this smaller form factor camera back into your hands. Did that have anything to do with it, or was that just kind of a happy coincidence?
For me, a bit of a happy coincidence. I was wanting to look at kind of the bigger picture as to why I create in the first place. And kind of through looking at the feature set of this camera, it made me think more deeply. Kind of the barriers I put in place for myself was taking this camera stripped down as simple as possible and just film something for me. And because of the feature set of this camera, I was able to just strip it down and create this piece that is more of like a window as to kind of where I'm at in my creative journey, is slowing down, thinking more intentionally about the projects I take on and that side of things as well. And it was really nice to remove the barriers of technology and leverage all of the amazing specs of this camera to tell this story.
Well, for anybody who didn't catch it at the beginning of the episode, because I did play Find Your Hidden Gem at the very beginning, I do want to kind of end the episode with that as well. So if anybody is curious, if you missed it at the beginning, I will show it at the very end as well, just to make sure that you're able to see this kind of really amazing, sweet little story that you came up with. Now, you had mentioned kind of you've been playing with the Z9, and now obviously with the Z8 being a smaller form factor. As similar as they are, was there any difference that you found between the two of them that you kind of went, ooh, I'm really gravitating toward one or the other?
To be honest, I was surprised of how jam-packed the Z8 was compared to the Z9. I was thinking that there would maybe some features would be removed or something like that. But it's pretty much the same camera. The only main difference I noticed in my style of working with it is the size. And what I found with the Z8 is that it was a lot more similar to working with the D810 in the form factor. If I went on a hike with my daughter, or like I would just always have the camera with me on that smaller size, where I find with the Z9, because it's a little bit bigger, it's a little bit bulkier, it's still a great size with it being smaller, but for me, I just gravitate to the Z8 because of the incredible specs and then it being so much smaller. You don't need to rig it up, you can just hold it handheld and still get an incredible shot. So I found myself kind of able to get shots I wasn't necessarily with bigger systems. One scenario in particular, we were shooting on the island and a big snowstorm had come through. It's rare for that big of a snowstorm to come through. And when we were wanting to get to one of the locations, one of the antique shops, the lady that owns it had said, if it snows, don't even try to go because the road is incredibly steep and I wouldn't be able to get my truck up there even though I have four-wheel drive. And we had went out there, tried to get up the road, couldn't get up there, and I just immediately dismissed getting that shot because in my head I'm thinking, oh, it's bigger systems. I've kind of just negated myself to, oh, it wasn't meant to be. But then my daughter actually said, she's like, well, why don't we just walk up there? And I'm like, you know what? Because of the size of this camera, I was able to just grab the camera, small set of tripod or a small set of sticks, walk with her up the hill. And I even came back with a bunch of antiques on my way back. That's something that I just wouldn't have been able to do with the bigger systems. And that for me is just, I feel free again.
So bigger isn't always better, is what you're getting at when it comes to video rigs.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question, totally off topic from everything else that I want to ask you, but it's how much of your car was jam-packed with antiques on the way back?
It was kind of interesting because we wanted to kind of use the trip for two functions. Because the film was also documenting our journey in collecting antiques, it was wanting to balance having all the gear I needed as well as leaving room for the antiques. And when I first packed with the gear, I didn't know what, or packed for the trip, I wasn't sure kind of what to expect. So I packed way too much gear. And ended up by the end of kind of getting to the idea of, I just want to strip down the camera and see what it can do. All the gear stayed in the truck. I didn't need it. So it was kind of fascinating. The truck was full. I'd say half with camera gear, half with antiques. And the funny part is, like I said, I didn't use most of it.
Okay, so one last question to kind of wrap it all up. We'll kind of go back to the actual camera. Now, you've been using the Z9 for a while, and one of its biggest features, one of its biggest benefits is just how many features it has kind of rammed into what is a relatively small body. But with the Z8, it's gotten even smaller. So whether it's things like in-camera RAW, the waveform, even something tiny like the little red record frame, like was there anything in particular that you found to be really crucial to getting the project done other than the size? Was there anything of the actual feature set that you kind of went, wow, and really kind of helped you kind of push forward?
There were a few features that I would say surprised me and was helped with this project. Is obviously the flexibility in formats and frame size options. Whether I wanted to shoot ProRes, RAW, Nikon RAW, or H.265 or H.264. You have so much flexibility there. So depending on what I was filming, I wasn't limited with those specific frame sizes or formats. The depth of color I liked of the NRAW. That was really nice to be able to push the image because I wanted to go with all natural light with this project. I was wanting to see how far I could push it, whether it was filming towards a window or leveraging that natural light and shooting the other direction. As I pushed things, I was able to get so much more than I actually expected from it. I've always loved the flat profile of Nikon cameras, and I feel with the Nikon RAW, it's just pushed it that little bit further to get that little bit more out of the image, which has been nice.
So Preston, we've talked about you shooting with the D810 and the D800, kind of D810, D850 line. It's really well known for how versatile it is as a kind of a platform, high resolution, but also great video. How do you kind of find the Z8 in terms of its versatility for doing stills or video or a combination of the two?
I found, so for myself, I still use the Nikon D810s for time-lapse work. I've had it for years and it's still an active player in my video production workflow. But what I've found with the Nikon Z8 now is that I can use this camera for all aspects of production, whether it's time-lapse photography to be used on a gimbal or all the video production work that I do. It's so fascinating in how the feature set of this is taking what used to be multiple tools and bringing it into one for me. It's for me exciting to be able to integrate this into my workflow now.
So it's not just the fact that it's a smaller body, but you're taking basically multiple, what would have been before, multiple bodies, and all having them in a single smaller body. So it's not just kind of one or the other. You're getting versatility across the kind of spectrum, whether you want to do photography, whether you want to do time lapses, whether you want to go and do dedicated video. It's kind of this all-in-one beautiful kind of hybrid camera, which is really, really exciting, because we know how important the Z9 was. I think this Z8 is just going to take that even further, because it is going to hit so many more different people out there when they see the specs, the capability, and the form factor all in one.
Very true. And how I like to create too is to just always have a camera with me. And the fact that I can have one camera to do all of that at any time, whenever I feel like getting creative, it's incredibly exciting, and I feel I'm probably going to create more because of it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, when you say creating, back in the DSLR world, when you were kind of in the midst of creating your whatever content it was, when you were filming a piece, were you manual focus only? Did you ever rely on the autofocus of the camera? And has that changed at all, kind of moving into the Z9 and the Z8?
It's weird coming from the video world, having focus pullers and always being manual focus for everything. The idea of using autofocus for video was something that I just didn't even consider. I just wrote it off. It's just, it's not going to work. But after now working with the Z9 and Z8, it's fascinating. There are a couple of shots in Find Your Hidden Gem where I hadn't quite made the transition to rely on the autofocus. I'm like, oh, it just can't be that good. But now after playing with it at home, a couple gripes I have with a couple of the shots of me manually pulling focus would have completely been solved if I would have just trusted the camera. It's somewhat freeing, but also a weird thing to wrap my head around how well it works.
Well, that's one of the things when it comes to us working with you on projects like this. I know that you have a particular way of shooting, and kind of coming from the world you did, I didn't want to shove down your throat and say, you need to use autofocus for every single one of these shots. So I kind of almost left that as as a secondary feature for you. And I just wanted you to kind of find your own way. But hearing now you saying, oh, I wish I had pushed myself, I wish I'd used and trusted the camera more. It's really amazing to hear that, because it wasn't something that we kind of touched on pretty much at all. We just kind of let you go and do your own thing, and to you kind of organically to have seen how good it is now, it just makes it even that much more of a kind of easier camera to use and to get great footage out of.
Especially when we're working with a 4-year-old, you only have so many takes. And if you miss focus on a take, you're not going to maybe have a second take. So that's been another part of it too, is with documentary work especially, is knowing you're going to nail that focus is very helpful.
Very nice. Now, I'm just going to ask, because I'm curious, what editing software did you use to actually, because you did shoot almost the entire thing in the NRAW. What editing software did you use? So prior to jumping into this project, I had been using Premiere for every project, but pivoted to Resolve for this project. And what was really incredible with the shooting with the Nikon RAW is I initially expected to have to use the proxy files that are recorded alongside the NRAW. But when I started to play with the footage, I was able to use and play back real time the 8K RAW, no problem. So I ended up just doing using that NRAW footage while I was doing the edit, which was really freeing, because I could do a quick color pass to see kind of the feel or kind of the style I was going for with the film while I was doing it. So that was a nice surprising feature as well, is how well the Nikon RAW works in Resolve. Well, that's fantastic, and it's something that I think a lot of filmmakers are now seeing, is how powerful Resolve is and how easy it is as you start pushing to shooting N-Log, whether it's just standard kind of H.265 10-bit, or if you're going to go and kind of fully jump in and shoot in raw video, being able to go and do those really, I'll say, I don't want to say easy color grades, but the software is now making it much easier than I think what it used to be, whether it's Premiere, Final Cut. Resolve is really kind of stepping forward. So that's fantastic to see. And I don't want to take too much of your time up, Preston. So I just want to say for myself and for everybody else watching, thank you very much, not only for coming on today, but for being part of the process. You really were so much fun to work with. Every time we had to jump on a phone call or you had edits, it was just really easy and just a pleasure to work with you. So hopefully I'll have you back on in future episodes. Maybe we can do something with Resolve. Maybe we can do something with kind of your workflow. I don't know what it is, but thank you very much for joining us, and I'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. Thanks for your time.
All right, everybody. So let's now jump right in to talk to Viktoria. She's now obviously on the still side of things. So she had some amazing imagery that she was able to get out from the Z8. So let's jump on in and see what she thought. All right, so Viktoria, thank you very much for coming back to Nikon TV. It's always great to have you on.
Thank you, Chris. It's great to be here.
Well, so I will do a little bit of an introduction and kind of introduce people to you if they don't already know you, which they should. You've been a Nikon ambassador, Nikon Canada ambassador for years now. If anybody doesn't follow your Instagram, they absolutely should. It just has stunning image after stunning image. Now, when I think about your Instagram, though, I think mostly about kind of landscapes, obviously your dog, but I don't think people realize that as a general kind of photographer, for you doing this as your career, you don't just do the beautiful landscapes. You obviously love doing those, but you do portraiture, you do weddings, you do events, sports, action, like you name it, you literally do anything. And you actually you wrote an article for us for our Learn and Explore section of our website, basically talking about how being a very versatile photographer, being able to kind of do a little bit of everything helps, especially in the last couple of years that we've had. So it's amazing kind of how versatile you are. And I guess you also need a camera that is able to kind of handle any of those different types of situations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really nice to not have to switch up bodies when you have a camera that does everything. That is a huge bonus. Yeah, totally.
Now, when you're shooting, and I guess obviously certain types of photography make a difference or not, but obviously when you're going off into the backcountry, when you're shooting on a wedding all day long, you want something that is going to be obviously very versatile, but you also want to prioritize the size a little bit as well. Now, last year you had played with the Z9, which obviously is a fantastic camera, but when you and I talked about it afterwards, you said that there was one thing you didn't like, and you feel free to share that with everybody now.
Yeah, I mean, I loved the camera. And I really, really wanted to have it, but there was just the one thing that was holding me back was just the fact that it was bigger than I was hoping for. I wanted something that was a bit smaller, really, just mainly for the kind of hiking aspect and that kind of thing, really, just having that slightly smaller size.
So knowing that you had kind of like been using one of the greatest cameras you've ever used, but then to know that I wasn't quite perfect enough. You needed that extra something to really kind of get it into your hands. When we contacted you for this, that must have just been an absolute dream come true to get basically the Z9 in the smaller compact size that you were hoping for.
Yeah, to say that I was a bit excited was underestimating it, really. I was very, very excited. This was what I was really hoping for. So yeah, I was very, very happy to be asked to take it out on a test drive, and it was fantastic.
Now, when you did take it out on the test drive for this launch, can you kind of describe a little bit about where you went and where you tried to go? Because one of the things that kind of grabbed me when I saw your images for the first time was how versatile and I'm saying the word versatile every second sentence here, but that really is kind of, it sums up a lot of you and this project. the versatility of the images that you provided. You provided some animals, you provided some landscapes, you provided some kind of water scene. So there was a little bit of everything in there. And obviously, this time of the year, I think it's easy to say that it's not the easiest to go and get great landscape shots, Western Canada, just because of the overall look. So whereabouts did you go, and how long did we give you with the camera? I think it was about 10 days or just under 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was probably worked out about 10, 12 days, I think. But yeah, the difficulty of having kind of melting snow, looking a little bit ugly, was a bit difficult. So I headed west to Vancouver Island. They were also having some strange weather for the time of year as well. So I wasn't quite sure how much I would manage to get done there. So I wanted to make sure I had a few different kind of diverse landscapes. So I started off on Vancouver Island. And then I headed south and down into the States, went into Washington and along the coast a little bit, and then down into Oregon and through into the Painted Hills sort of area. So a real kind of diversity of like seascape stuff and a little bit in a forest and just, you know, a whole range of different things.
And those kind of wide range of things is what kind of stuck out to me was how many different types of shots you were able to get in that short period of time. Now, when shooting, because obviously you shot with the Z9 for a little bit, were there any features about the Z8 that really stuck out to you that maybe you didn't expect, or you were just really, really happy that were there?
Yeah, I mean, I was really happy to have the same sensor that the Z9 has. Just the autofocus abilities as well, you know, being able to, you know, suddenly switch to shooting wildlife if I'm out photographing a landscape and, you know, I see some wildlife, just having that diversity. And then obviously, I don't shoot a lot of video, but having the ability to shoot video with that camera too is really handy. It just means I don't have to bring another body along if I'm going to do that. So yeah, just having it all in one package was really very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably like ever since we've come out with the Z9. Every time I do a Nikon TV episode, every time I talk about it with somebody at a trade show, it's always basically the do everything camera. It almost doesn't matter what type of photography or videography somebody does. You're able to say, oh, you do portraiture? Yes, it'll be great for it. Oh, you do sports? Yes, it'll be great for it. Oh, you just landscape? It'll be great for it. So it really checked off a lot of boxes, and I think people are going to be very, very excited with the Z8 as well, just due to the fact that it can do all of those things while being smaller and lighter. Now, when you had to give the camera back, I know, it was horrible. I know you wanted to just kind of stick it in your bag and leave it there and not send it back. But I know how excited you are to get your hands back on with another one. Now, is there anything in particular that you're excited to shoot with it? Maybe it's something that you just didn't have enough time to shoot with, or maybe a different subject matter, just something totally kind of out of left field. Is there anything that really kind of says, oh, I really want to try it with this new camera?
Yeah, I mean, I had an opportunity to do a little bit of night photography, but the night that we had wasn't fantastic in terms of, you know, there's a bit of cloud cover and it wasn't what I was hoping for. So I found it so great to use at night, and even in low light situations, you know, arriving pre-dawn to shoot sunrise, having the ability to see the buttons in the dark, you know, having the buttons that light up, the viewfinder, just having the brightness, being able to figure out exactly where everything is, and also having the I can't think of the right words, but the thing around the viewfinder, so it contains your image. You can actually see where it's running off into the darkness. So I think for me, I again don't do a lot of night photography, but I can see myself feeling very comfortable with that camera, and I think I'm going to do some more. I definitely found it very useful, and I was shooting alongside someone else, and her camera was really struggling in the situations that this one was just, it was a breeze, you know? So we had to keep putting headlamps on to light up stuff for her because she couldn't get focus. And so yeah, it was definitely some night photography will be on the cards.
Well, the great thing about what you just said is you and I are actually going to be going to a conference in just a couple weeks time, and we are going to be shooting a ton of night landscape shots. So Light Chasers, it's something southern Alberta we're actually going to be going into with a whole number of other amazing photographers. I don't really need to talk about it too much because I think it's totally already booked up, but I know how excited I am for it because it's one of those things where you always hope when you travel to be able to get great night shots, and then you get skunked with clouds. It may be rainy, snowy, whatever the reason is. So I'm really hoping we have good weather, and I'm hoping that we get to go out and do some fun shooting together.
Yeah, that will be, I'm hoping so too. It'll be great. Yeah.
Alrighty, well, Victoria, I don't want to take any more of your time. What I hope anybody is who's watching here is thinking is, well, she got her hands on one, she's going to get her another model later. I hope I can go and shoot with the Z8 too, because it literally does everything. Night landscape, sports, action, wedding, you name it. It is so versatile, word of the day, of a camera. So thank you, Victoria, very, very much for joining us. I hope to have you on another episode of Nikon TV, and I'll talk to you later.
Thank you so much, Chris. Take care.
Bye, Victoria. Well, I hope that you guys liked those interviews as much as I did. Preston, as I said, he's so genuine. Victoria, every time I either see her in person, we do an online Nikon TV episode, she's just spectacular. Her images are amazing. Her versatility is just awe-inspiring. And then you just talk to her and you're like, oh, and you're the nicest human being on the planet. That's just great. So I hope you guys did enjoy those interviews. If you do have any questions for them or for me, make sure you throw them down in the comments below. I will definitely try and get to any questions that I can, get any of them answered for you, and hopefully get you guys as excited about this Z8 as I am. So until the next episode, I'll see you then.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Ready or not, here I come. Where are you? What do you hear?
The ocean.
There is something so unique about a child's ability to be in the moment, as if they have everything and nothing figured out at the same time. We spend so much time saying no, trying to teach them to act like us. But why? Why not follow their sense of wonder? Why not buy into their sense of play? It sometimes takes that one moment to put things into perspective,
It's me.
to move from inside your mind to the moments in front of you. We choose these moments to explore together, to take her lead, to connect with our childlike wonder, and to chase our dreams, ignoring the what-ifs, to show that your future is whatever you want it to be, to not lead with fear. For us, it's showing her through these objects from the past that your hidden gem is what you make it. Whether it's an object or maybe even something more. Our hidden gem is in finding these moments together.
That's nice.
The ones you take for granted, not forcing them, but letting them happen.
Hey, Mom, look at this.
Keep that one.
Ocean, need more ocean.
It's funny, you know, no matter how much work and growth you put in, sometimes you just need a little reminder.
I can't keep on this road time I thought I knew, but all this time away, it's been you. 'Cause I can run, but I can't hide the feelings that I know.
Ready, action.